Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1113, 1113, Saturday, April 25th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, the House of Cards is collapsing, and it is at an accelerated pace. Yes, indeed. Just an avalanche of new information here over the past 2 or 3 weeks. Things are really starting to pick up steam. So let's go ahead and get to the breaking news of the day. I doubt if I can get to all of it, but I'll get to as many of these stories as I can. Okay, probably the biggest revelation that came out yesterday was in reference to the case regarding General Michael Flynn. So here's what we have. Yesterday, the Department of Justice, actually the Department of Injustice, provided evidence and information to Michael Flynn's counsel, Sidney Powell, that will prove Michael Flynn committed no crimes. Rather, it will show criminal acts on the part of the government. The information comes from long-requested Brady material, which is essentially exculpatory evidence. This exculpatory evidence, Brady material, will prove Michael Flynn's innocence. Sidney Powell has filed a motion based on this to dismiss the case in light of these new revelations. Powell had received the letter from the Department of Injustice after the investigation of a U.S. attorney in Missouri appointed by Attorney General Barr to review the Flynn case, and it can now be confirmed that there was a side deal, not to prosecute Michael Flynn Jr. if Michael Flynn Sr. would plead guilty to a charge of lying to the FBI. The documents are filed under seal, but more documents are expected to be forthcoming. Sidney Powell says the documents show that General Flynn was deliberately set up and framed by corrupt agents and lawyers at the FBI and the DOJ. The focus of criminal misconduct is now focused on Silly Sally Yates, Andy McCabe, Dana Boente, who, by the way, also signed off on one of those FISA warrants, and Uncle Bob the Executioner Mueller's prosecutor, Brandon Van Grack. Also should be noted that Christopher Wray and Dana Boente have been blocking the release of this Brady material for over a year. Christopher No Shit Sherlock Wray. Here's what I think. I don't know how much longer he's going to last, but I'll tell you what. I just about guarantee that the day after Trump's re-election here, in about 7 months, in November, I'm predicting the day after Christopher No Shit Sherlock Wray is going to be fired, if he makes it that long. He's part of the cover-up crew. Now, it actually gets worse. As bad as that is, and believe me, there's a lot more detail to this story. You can go read Washington Examiner, The Federalist, Conservative Treehouse, and you'll find much more in-depth examinations of this activity regarding to what happened yesterday with Michael Flynn and this investigation by this U.S. attorney in Missouri appointed by Barr. I just don't have time to go into the real nitty-gritty details because there's so many other things to talk about today. And so that's the basic meat and potatoes of that particular story. But there's another story that sort of runs parallel to that. This coming to us from the Washington Examiner, Jerry Dunleavy. He is reporting that John Durham has been investigating the leaks of potentially classified information to the media in 2017 about Michael Flynn. And it is suspected that the leaks on Michael Flynn were meant to kneecap Michael Flynn, to keep him from becoming Trump's national security advisor. And the main leak that they are focused on, of course, is the Flynn Kislyak phone call. It is the main focus of Durham's inquiry into the media leaks used against Michael Flynn. Man, oh man, we absolutely do want to know who it was that leaked that Flynn Kislyak phone call. Now, the most popular candidate over the past 6 months has been Stefan Halper's boss at the Office of Net Assessment. He is the one that a lot of people believe was the one who leaked the Flynn Kislyak phone call. It's not been proven, but he is a top candidate. But I think it could also be somebody in that small group or someone working with, because it was really McCabe, Silly Sally Yates, and what's his name? Dana Buente, who were really the 3 top people who were pushing the Flynn thing. And of course, it was Peter's been stroking us who sent the FBI agents over, and they were told to do so by Jimmy the Weasel Comey. So all these people are small group people. So I believe that the Flynn Kislyak leak probably was directed from the small group. Now, who physically leaked it, it's hard to say. But the top candidate is Stefan Halper's boss at the Office of Net Assessment, which would put you into the Pentagon. Why shouldn't they get in on the act? Everybody else was a part of the coup. Why not the military-industrial complex? Especially in regards to Flynn, because he was going to, let's say, clean things up. Well. You're going to enjoy this next story. So we talked yesterday about the fact that Chrissy Steele wiped all of his data about anything having to do with the dossier, sources for the dossier, and all this other stuff. Why? Because, of course, well, there wasn't really much to wipe because there wasn't really anything there other than what he was being fed by Confusion GPS. So we talked about that yesterday, but you'll find this, I'm sure, very interesting. It appears that Chrissy Steele wiped his Orbis computer of all communications with Confusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, on January the 5th of 2017. That's the same day as the secret Oval Office meeting which included Obama, Susan Rice, Jimmy the Weasel Comey, Silly Sally Yates, Joe Biden, and it's alleged there may have been a couple other people there, but they were the main players. And of course, they were there to talk about Russian interference in the election. Of course, that's the same meeting that Susan Rice wrote the Cover Your Ass letter about. But keep in mind, the meeting occurred on the 5th, but Susan Rice writes a letter on Inauguration Day, January 20th, about the meeting on January 5th, where she's basically writing the Cover Your Ass letter, where she's saying, Obama told us to do everything by the book. And we always wondered why Susan Rice would write a memo on the 20th, on Inauguration Day, about a meeting that occurred 15 days earlier, especially such an important meeting as this, because it was in that meeting that they specifically were discussing how to withhold intelligence information from the incoming president. That's what they were focused on. What are we going to do now? Trump's going to be coming over here in a little while. He's being inaugurated here right now as we're speaking. He'll be coming over here to his new house, his new home, the White House. He's going to be president of the United States. How are we going to hide and keep hidden all the secret intelligence information about the investigation that we're doing, which he is the target? How are we going to hide that from him? That's what the gist of the meeting was about. Now, Susan Rice says that at that time, on January 5th, that is the first time that she ever heard about the Trump-Russia investigation. That she had never known the fact that there was an investigation going on around Trump and his campaign, that she didn't know about any of it until January 5th of 2017. I'm sure that's why they had her in the meeting, because she was so out of the loop. Of course you'd want to have her there. And she also says, or her attorney says, that it was not her idea to draft that letter 15 days after the meeting happened. She says that it was the White House counsel, in other words, Obama's lawyer, Catherine Rimler, who approached her, Rice, and advised her to write the cover your ass letter. That is according to Rice's attorney. So they're meeting on January the 5th with Obama, Rice, Comey, Yates, Biden, and possibly others. And they're talking about the Trump-Russia investigation, which Rice says she had never heard of until then. They're discussing how to keep information about the investigation into Trump and his campaign hidden from Trump and his team, especially about Michael Flynn. They definitely didn't want him learning about that. Why would they? I mean, why would you want the incoming president, to know that his potential national security advisor was a Russian stooge? No, you wouldn't want that to happen, would you? Why, of course you would. It's exactly what you would want. In fact, didn't Obama tell Trump that day, on Inauguration Day, that Michael Flynn was someone he should consider being a person of they should be concerned about? Yet in this very meeting, just before, a few hours before, they're talking about why they shouldn't say anything to Trump or let him know about the investigation into Michael Flynn and himself and his team. But specifically him. He was the target. His team was just a way to get to him. Trump's team was the window into the target, which was Trump. Can you believe this crap? Yes, it was Kathleen Rumler. And if you Google Kathleen Rumler, you will get quite the bit of entertainment when you find out all the deep state leftists that she's connected to and all the plots that she's been involved in covering up. She's a cover-up artist of the highest order, top tier. She was Obama's White House counsel. Kathleen Rumler, I believe it's Rummler. But you Google it, you'll get damn close. You'll see what I mean. She is dirty, dirty, dirty to the bone. Involved and up to her eyeballs in every Democratic plot. You think about every Democratic plot in the last 20 years, she's caught up in it. And she's very, very good as an attorney at covering up Democrat crimes. And she was kept quite busy during the Obama years. Now, we have some more bad news for Burisma Joe Biden. The cops are now investigating the criminal complaint filed by Tara Reade. Now, keep in mind, it is a crime to file a false police report. And maybe that's why they're investigating. They want to see if she filed a false criminal complaint. So they're investigating. So what happens if after their investigation, they conclude that she did not file a false criminal complaint? And when you look at the people who she talked to right after this happened, and some other evidence that I'm about to talk about, I think the cops are going to find that it's not a false criminal complaint, that it's a very legitimate criminal complaint. Now, the statute of limitations has run out for this type of a crime, which I believe would be sexual assault. I assume that they don't consider it rape, even though she claims that Biden did penetrate her with his fingers. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's exactly rape or not, but it's awfully damn close. So then yesterday, a video surfaces, and it is a video from 1993. the Larry King live show. That day, Tara Reade's mother called in to Larry King Live to ask for advice on how to deal with such a situation, where she didn't name names, but she described how someone close to her was sexually assaulted by a very powerful Washington politician, and how she would advise, or she was asking Larry King for his advice on how to deal with that kind of a situation. Tara Reade's mother calling Larry King to ask Larry King's advice on how someone might deal with a sexual crime committed by a very powerful Washington politician against a particular young woman. It just turned out to be her daughter, but she disguised the specifics in the phone call. But it's now all over YouTube. You can see it anywhere. That is probably going to help substantially the police to come to the conclusion that it was in fact not a fake complaint, because this was back in 1993. She also told her brother and one of her friends and another staffer. She also was demoted as a result of this. So, there's plenty of evidence, a hell of a lot more evidence of this than there was in the Kavanaugh situation. We will see where this goes. But here is what I told Joe Biden back in the spring of this year. I said, don't do it, Joe. Don't do it. Stay out of this race, Joe. Don't get in this race, Joe. Stay out. For good reason. Because you do not want to get in between the rotten reverend and some power. If you get between the rotten reverend and something she wants, and that's usually power, things are going to go badly for you. Plain and simple. I'm not aware of a single person who's gotten between the rotten reverend and something she wanted who didn't end up in a bad way. And now it's Burisma Joe. What, did he think that because he's Burisma Joe that the rotten Reverend Clinton would back off? I'm sorry. When it comes to power, anyone who gets... If it was the rotten Reverend Clinton's mother, if it was her mother, she would take her down if her mother stood between her and power. Do not get between the rotten Reverend Clinton and power. It's a dangerous thing to do. There are cemeteries full of people who tried it. Burisma Joe will be very, very lucky if the only thing that comes out of this is that he's driven out of the race because of these sexual assault allegations being proven true, or at least credible. He's standing between the rotten reverend and power. Not a good place to be if you want to stay healthy and out of the scandal headlines. So we talked yesterday about this, about John Durham expanding his team and bringing in this prosecutor, Scarpelli. And what was interesting about this is that Scarpelli primarily deals with drug trafficking, murder, and these types of crimes. But now we have some ideas, two specific ideas, what some people are suggesting may be the reason that he brought in Scarpelli. The number one reason would be that Scarpelli holds a very high-level, top-secret SCI clearance. What does that mean? Well, it means that he is cleared to view things in a SCIF. And this SCI, of course, that stands for Sensitive Compartmentalized Information. Very, very high-level classified information. So he holds the type of clearance that you would need to have to view this type of classified information. And, of course, you would need that clearance not just to view it, but if you were going to use that information in a prosecution of a case, you would obviously have to have the clearance to have seen it. So he both has the ability to see that information, which allows him to use that information in a criminal prosecution. So it has probably something to do with the fact that he has this type of clearance that allows him to view classified material in a SCIF, and for the purpose of being able to utilize the information he gains in a SCIF in a criminal hearing. Now, it likely would not, he likely would not be able to, in the open court hearing, discuss these things. It would probably be one of these types of deals where it's given to the judge behind closed doors, and transcripts with redactions given to a jury, and they would just have to refer to it. This will not be spoken about verbally in the courtroom, but the information can be given to the judge, the transcript from what was viewed in the SCIF, and of course the jury will see the same transcript behind closed doors. It will not be publicly disclosed, just like a lot of things that we saw in the so-called Mueller witch hunt, the so-called Mueller investigation, which was actually a witch hunt. The second reason that some people are speculating on why Scarpelli may have been selected is because he is an expert at prosecuting RICO cases. RICO being the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. So RICO violations generally deal with organized crime. A lot of times white-collar crime. And generally, when you're doing a RICO investigation, these types of crimes generally involve multiple layers of deceit, because it generally involves money laundering, racketeering, money laundering. And so you'll have multiple layers of players involved to hide the money laundering, to hide where the money is moving from and to. And you create so many layers that it throws people off the track because they cannot follow all the various layers of hands that the money passes through as it's being laundered. So you have to be really good at following these types of things, moving from point A to point B to point C to D to get to where you know you need to end up. You know the money started here, you know it ended here, but to make your case in court, you got to show every single place where that money moved. And that can sometimes be difficult because they do such a good job of hiding it. And they do this by laundering a lot of the times. So a lot of people are speculating that in this particular case, Durham is looking at this case and prosecuting it most likely like a RICO case. But what would be a little unique and fairly extraordinary in this particular instance would be that instead of the laundering of money, here we had the laundering of intelligence. So Durham would be interested in Scarpelli because he's got the security clearance to go to a SCIF, look at that information, and be able to use it in a prosecution, but also because he understands how to follow the movement of money and how these people think and operate. And I guess Durham is thinking, you know what? This is really like a high-level white-collar crime in a sense. It involved, conspiracy, racketeering, and laundering. But in this case, it wasn't money, it was intelligence or fake intelligence, information laundering. And so I think this may be why Scarpelli is looking good to Durham, because once Durham explains what he's investigating and throws in all the facts and all the information and evidence, Scarpelli can use his skills at linking together the movement of the illegal movement of money and transfers of money. He can apply those same skills that he's developed and mastered over the years to the intelligence, because Durham must be looking at this like, this is not a whole lot different than what they do when they launder money. It just, in this case, it was intelligence. So maybe that's why he's selected Scarpelli, because you're certainly going to prosecute this case now, as we can see, as a conspiracy. But again, when you get into prosecuting conspiracies to a jury, it can be very complicated. It's easy to lose a jury because these schemes are so complex. So you need to have the type of prosecutor who knows how to break these things down, and someone who's very skilled at breaking at breaking these things down to a jury so that they don't get lost through all the various movements. You have to be able to keep their interest and keep it very logical so they can follow what's happening. Because you get a conspiracy this vast with this many different moving parts going on at the same time, and all the different things, not to mention the distractions and the smoke and mirrors that are going on at the same time, all pretty much overclouded with another fake conspiracy that occupied the country for 3 years as a smokescreen, makes it even more difficult. So you really need someone who knows how to connect the dots on a very complex conspiracy and make it intelligible and understandable to a jury. So it's probably these qualities that are the reason that Durham tapped Scarpelli, because he is one of the, as I understand from what I read, one of the more skilled, in fact, a master of prosecuting RICO cases. Rudy Giuliani was very good and prosecuted a lot of these types of cases. So Scarpelli is also a master of this. And again, he obviously has learned how to present these complex sort of conspiracies to a jury. And he's got the right type of security clearance. The only thing he has to do is make an adjustment. In this case, he's used to getting juries to understand how money is laundered. But in this case, it was intelligence that was laundered. Other than that, if you just replace money for information, in this case, fake intelligence, you essentially have a RICO case. That's what this really is. It meets all the other standards that you would measure to decide if you're going to prosecute a conspiracy as a RICO case. And this would meet all those standards with the one exception, that it's about moving intelligence or fake intelligence, information, not money. Not that money wasn't moved, but as far as we know, there was no effort to hide money other than, the right Reverend Clinton using straw men. But I think that was fairly legitimate. There's nothing illegal that's typically done. Now, if they can prove that it was done with the motive of hiding it, then yeah, you might be able to make the case, but you're probably going to need something stronger than that if you're going for a big conspiracy case and you're going to prosecute it as a RICO violation. But the good thing about a RICO violation is it allows you to prosecute the case, which is a conspiracy, but you don't prosecute it as a conspiracy. You prosecute it, although there will be charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to do this, conspiracy to do that. It will certainly be mentioned in the charging documents, but the way that you're laying the case out and presenting the case, not to just the jury, but to the American public, is you're prosecuting the case as a organized crime, an organizational effort to commit crimes using multiple people, taking multiple actions, both independently and collectively, simultaneously, however you want to look at it. These are how these RICO cases are prosecuted, and Scarpelli would be a master and an expert at taking something this complex, and believe me, this is a very complex conspiracy, and he's probably the guy who Durham believes can make that case better than anyone. So it's these reasons why a lot of people think that Scarpelli was tapped. No one really talking too much about the fact that he also prosecutes a lot of murder cases, but so does Durham. Durham prosecutes people for murder every week, but so does Scarpelli. And of course we know that there might be a murder or two wrapped up in this deal. Of course, we knew that the demo commies would break out another attempt at a coup through impeachment, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We said it's just a matter of time, and we knew it would likely, now that we have the coronavirus, we knew that the next impeachment hoax would likely come out as a result of coronavirus. And of course, just as we all believed and would happen, has now happened. But I think that this one here is going to stall before it even gets out of the starting blocks. Now, most of you have probably heard this already, which is that we now have a new whistler. That's right, a new whistleblower. This guy, his name is Dr. Rick Bright. And apparently the Democrats, the Demo-commies, want to hold hearings because this guy is saying that he was fired. And he wasn't really fired. He was fired, but not completely fired from his job. He's just being moved from his former position to a new position. Because he's saying that he was fired because he was opposed to the use of hydroxychloroquine, and that's why he was moved out of his position. But of course, it appears now from past emails going back quite a few months, long before coronavirus even, that they had already determined back in early January, actually at the end of last year, that they were going to move him out of his position because of incompetence and something else, insubordination. Incompetence and insubordination. But not only that, in terms of his argument about him being moved out because he was opposed to the coronavirus, they have emails from this guy where he's actually promoting the use of hydroxychloroquine for treatment in coronavirus. So they've actually got this guy promoting the idea, and he's trying to say he was fired because he was opposed to the idea. Now, it appears that Trump doesn't know him, doesn't even know anything about this until someone asked him about it. Apparently, moving him out of his position into another position was something that was actually had been looking into since the end of last year, and the decision was actually made on January 2nd to do just that. And this just takes time for that to happen. It just so happened that this move came at this time where we are now. And so he can make it look that way. And what's even more humorous about this whole thing is that he's using the same attorneys, that crazy Katz lady and the other woman. He's using those same two women to be his attorneys. They were the same two women that represented Blasey Ford. So he's bringing back the old Blasey Ford legal team, and I don't think that they fared too well. So they're bringing them back, and that's going to be his defense attorneys. But this is going to go nowhere. It's dead on arrival before it even gets out of the starting blocks. But that won't stop the bug-eyed fool, Pelosi galore, and the Penguin from pursuing these hearings anyway, right in the middle of everything else that's going on. But I think that they'll get ass blasted really very quickly on this deal because of the things I just mentioned, and because no one really cares right now about something like that. It's really, no one really cares, and no one really believes it. You know, they've tried so many impeachment hoaxes now that they just don't work anymore. They just don't stick. Everyone just goes, oh no, not the Democrats, another impeachment hoax. Another whistler. No one's paying attention. No one's paying attention. We also have reports now that Durham is looking at Ed Baumgartner. Ed Baumgartner. We've talked a lot about Ed Baumgartner over the years. Of course, we know that he was on the payroll of Confusion at GPS. He stationed in London. He lives in London. He speaks fluent Russian. He was supposed to be some sort of a translator for Christopher Steele and Confusion GPS. He also was a student of Nellie Ohr's when Nellie Ohr was teaching, and she communicated with him during the summer of 2016 as well. So he also was on the Daniel Jones team. So he's connected to a lot of people, and now Durham wants to have a talk with Mr. Baumgartner. We also have, we're learning that John Podesta was helping Clinton crony Dan Jones, who we talked about yesterday and now just a minute ago, Dan Jones and Glenn Simpson to raise $12 million to prove the dossier was true. This is coming from Paul Sperry. Yes, that's right. John Podesta helped Clinton crony Dan Jones and Glenn Simpson to raise $12 million to prove the dossier was true. Oh my goodness, man. The house of cards is collapsing, and it's happening quickly. It's accelerating, as I said. We'll stay on the story, and we'll follow up on all these again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Stay well. See you.